The headline you all saw was that the Republican National Committee for 2020, for Trump primarily, paid $42 million over an 8-month period of time for a media marketing service company, and seems suspicious. For legal reasons and also for transparency reasons, so one hand doesn't know what the other's doing, you divvy up each individual project and give it to an LLC or whatever, and sometimes build them on the spot. And these are done for a limited period of time so that they can solve a specific problem, so that they are responsible for the people in it for it. Because it's an LLC, the company is responsible, but you can't really hold the employees responsible. They were just following orders. So, the Digital Consulting Group, LLC, created January 15th of 2020. That's an intentionally generic name. It's meant to make it harder to find, obviously. If you do an LLC, you have to have some signature somewhere. Sometimes it's not written very well. Sometimes they can be started by another company, so you have to go trace out that company and find out who's really running it. But in this case, it listed James K. Pickle, as the person responsible for the company. He works at, or worked at, Maynard, Cooper, and Gale out of Huntsville, Alabama, and other locations. And it isn't necessarily that business having anything to do with it, but it's definitely James K. Pickle who started it. January 15th, 2020. And the timing of it lines up with other LLCs like this having all the money shifted away from them. Let's see how transparent this rabbit hole goes. The business name has to list some physical address or some entity it's underneath. In this case, it listed 1000 Northwest Street, Wilmington, Delaware, zip code 19801. And then it lists Suite 1200 in the Brandywine Building, as it's called. This is the Brandywine Building. But that's for Regus, or Regus, virtual offices, as well as real offices. They use Internet Country Code top-level domains, or CCTLDs, that allow for special clients that want an untraceable fake front business. The TLDs that are listed are so that you can add them to the no-block list for Russia, Iraq, Angola, Brunei, and several other locations that are interesting places to set up a business at. So, what's the cost for it? Let's just discuss the pay rate. 2 cents a square foot. 2 cents a square foot on a rack mount system for an LLC to be located as mail slots. It can also be used for actual rental of the open space, so that you can have a virtual office. You put up your own marker. You can keep changing the. Yeah. So anyway, you put up your shingle if you want. Often used for anonymous shell companies, money laundering, or avoiding disclosure for instance, political payola in other countries. Guess which country you guys were looking up for Dominion and such. It's actually, yeah. Especially to public entities like the Federal Election Commission. You are required, if you're running an election, to list data expenditures. Your party, PAC, or outside spending group or candidate must do so. The reason for this is simple. During an election, the level of paying bribes and payola massively increased, and still does, during elections. No, this isn't voter fraud. This is literally rigging an election. So to keep that from happening, you're required to give up the information. July 27th of 2020, the Campaign Legal Center which is supposed to watchdog this stuff and look for irregularities or obviously people shifting money around and trying to make it harder to trace at all, which is illegal as fuck, filed an 81-page complaint and evidence listing with the FEC, or Federal Election Commission, accusing the Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee, both, at one point or another, of laundering nearly $170 million and also funneling $250 million through front companies and shifting it around to make it almost impossible to trace in order to hide the ultimate recipient of the money. Firms belonging to various entities like Parcel and other campaign lawyers were listed. We'll be getting to Parcel in a minute. They also used American-made media company, laundering money to other vendors without disclosing to the FEC on time. How long has this been going on? I mean, it's the 2020 election. Till the day Donald Trump announced being president, up till July of 2020. That's 4 fucking years of shifting money around. Cleaning the books. Interesting. The Republican National Committee has used anonymous and front LLCs all along since before 2016 was also disclosed in it, because they decided to dig as deep as they needed to find all the incidents. So they found a chain of evidence of companies being started and stopped about a year apart or 6 months apart, sometimes overlapping, but very little of that. Mostly in the form of paying a company, having it do work, mostly shifting money to contractors, and then shutting down and leaving themselves dormant, and another company starting up the day the money stopped being sent to them and being sent to another company. This shell gaming has been going on for obviously more than 4 years. And I should also point out, if you're not aware of it, Donald Trump's companies have been involved in exactly the same thing in New York. Hiding where the money goes and comes from. And I should also point out that Donald Trump, doing the Free America from the Tyranny of the Evil Liberals campaign that's been going on, dumps all the money into an entity that says 75% of it won't have to go for what it says, and just goes into a slush fund so Trump can pay off his $300 million that he owes people. You see, during being a president, you're not supposed to make a large amount of money. He could just claim afterwards that after the election was over, I wasn't really the president, or something. But hey, laundering money means moving it around without having it traced. This is literally money laundering. This is no different. Several other Republican National Committee vendors, contractors, got payments suddenly stopped or decreased the same day that Digital Consulting Group, LLC, was formed. Direct Persuasion, Excelsior, which started in 2017, January. They always do this really simple timing system that's very easy to track. Just go through the list of companies that stopped and then see that when they did, new ones, and see if they're related. One of them was OPN Sesame, run by Gary Colby, Trump campaign digital director, was in the Republican National Committee as an ad director. Garrett Lansing, chief digital officer at one time. That's a company or group. He was paid $4 million in 2019, but around only $50,000 in the year 2020. This is also the company that in 2020 did unmarked texts, but made it look like they didn't have the money. They were given the money a year ahead of time, to alert everybody of radical liberals and Dems trying to steal the election from Trump by doing all sorts of demonstrations and disruptions. They're all false flags because they're paid for by the Soros. So please show up at this exact address to do exactly the same thing, because you're totally not imitating what we just told you that the liberals are doing. And wow, projection through text. Brad Parcell Company got $90 million in less than a year for the 2016 Republican National Committee election campaign drive. Parcell Strategy, the company that bought marketing rights to a set of data on 80 million Americans, 80 million Americans. That number sounds really fucking familiar. What the fuck? Oh, anyway, what happened? Well, apparently it fucked over 10 million of them. And listed them as under a term of art to designate a specific group they were targeting. Faith-based individuals. They looked at your social media accounts and found out you're willing to repost conspiracy theories, QAnon shit. Even once. Designating them as evangelical Christians. Faith-based. And then the other listing was immune to influences due to science and medicine. Links below in the description. $90 million for 80 million, $110, $115 for each of you. Collecting the information from millions and millions of social media accounts and targeting ads to them and or feeding them fake news stories about how everything is bad. They got like 70 million out of 80 million to do it. The other 10 million got insulted by the idiocy and flipped the vote to Biden. So let's try to wrap this up. James K. Pickell, who is associated with Maynard, Cooper, and Gale out of Huntsville, Alabama, and many other locations, set up Digital Consulting Group, LLC. Or maybe it's a different one, different guy, even though his name is Pickell. And this consulting group was in a shoebox or a mail slot at a business in Wilmington, Delaware that does nothing but virtual businesses that are used as false front companies for people specifically tailored using country codes for top-level domain names for people in Angola, Russia, Brunei, various tax havens to set up false business entities out of that country, but based in Wilmington, Delaware, in a mail slot, or maybe a rack mount location for maybe their website. This company didn't have one, by the way. All for as little as 2 cents per square foot, which means it's a rack mount system. Using anonymous shells for money laundering, avoiding political payola disclosure, setting up a fake domain name so it appears that you are really Russian or that you're really an American. They might have offices in Russia. Being involved in a company that was very obviously part of a money shifting and money laundering process to avoid the Federal Election Commission getting data expenditure data reported by candidates, parties, political action committees, and outside spending groups. Totally not collusion. Other companies that had been getting money that weren't were involved in things like sending people text messages telling them to go to a certain location and do flash mob style protests to protest other arranged flash mob protests that are totally by the Soros. And another company that got information, this is public domain information mixed with your Twitter profile, collecting and collating it, cross-referencing it, to find faith-based or faith logic or faith-based science and belief and medicine people described as evangelical Christians or some other code name for 80 million of you to target for advertisement and possibly using you as free amplifiers and influencers to promote conspiracy theories. They only paid 90 million for that. And actual filings against Trump campaign and the RNC for doing overt money laundering and demanding that they simply produce transparent information. But then again, Donald Trump is constantly repeating that he can't give us his tax data because he lies about the procedures used by the IRS during audits for 4 fucking years. But hey, let's talk about Hillary's emails and how everybody's a reptilian baby eater on one side. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good fucking luck.